Welcome to your Daily 5 for Thursday, November 9th, 2023. I did at least 2 5s, and I think I mentioned on the show that I was really looking forward to the newest entry in the Assassin's Creed series called Mirage. Now, this game, when it was when the trailers were coming out, when the companies were talking about it, they described it as a more focused and pared back experience. And that immediately appealed to me because, as I've said many times, I really kind of checked out of Assassin's Creed when Odyssey came out, when I started to play that game. And I started riding around and realized that I was spending hours, literally hours, riding around in a world that had very little to actually do in big parts of it. Now, certainly there were missions and all the rest of it, but there were large stretches where you would be riding along in the countryside, which granted was beautiful to look at, but that felt very lifeless. And to me, there just wasn't an appeal in that. And I kind of just, like I said, gave up on the series. And from what I understand, Valhalla continued that particular trend, which many games did. It's often described as the Ubisoft formula, a giant map with a bunch of little check marks that don't really amount to much. But honestly, it's something just like many trends that a lot of games do. And I've talked about this also in FIs, where I'm not really defining the worth of a game by how many hours it will let you spend. Now, I understand there's some irony in me saying that when I put probably 100 hours into Baldur's Gate, but that's a perfect example of that game is packed with things to do. And I know I've missed things. Lando and I have missed stuff in that game. We've played it for 100 hours. Whereas other games I've played for almost that amount of time, and it feels like there's almost nothing to do in them. Starfield kind of has that problem, where I feel like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing in this game? What is there to do? But I've already talked about that. Let's get back to Mirage, which I've now played, I don't remember how many hours, but the percentage meter says I'm about 40% through it. My understanding is it's around a 20 to 30 hour game. And I gotta tell you, I am enjoying it immensely. This feels like what I think not only I, but a lot of other people wanted Assassin's Creed to be. And the reviews I've read seem to follow that trend, where it's very much a love it or hate it type of review cycle for this, where there are people who feel like, okay, this game kind of pulling back on its scale has helped it a lot, and now it's far more enjoyable. And there are other people, and some of this may be tied to the fact that, and it is clear they've jettisoned a good portion of some of the background narrative and certainly the future stuff. They said that. I don't really love that. But then again, if they're going to err on one side or the other, I'd rather they fall on this side of the fence than the other. If this is what it takes to make this game feel tight and focused and polished again, then I'm okay with that. I would love them to do more of the future story and all the kind of mythology stuff. I enjoyed all that. I always did. But if audiences don't have a taste for that anymore, and the decision is, well, do we make a big empty map because we're not going to put the elements people don't like in it and it's just going to be lifeless and sterile? Or do we bring, again, the scale back to where there are things to do and you feel like your actions actually matter from minute to minute? Then I'll take this version. I'm enjoying it a lot. The gameplay feels very tight. The map is beautiful. I like the fact that I've turned on the Arabic language with subtitles, so I'm hearing it all in the native language of the time. There's just so much about it that feels like it is more in line with the first 2 or 3 games. You know, the Altair stuff feels a lot like that first game in terms of the setting and the character, and also just that it is more focused on the simple mechanics that define the early games. There really isn't that much to learn in this game. You're either assassinating people from points of, you're above them, or you're sneaking around to your ambushes or whatever and kind of drawing them in, or you are in some type of actual combat, which the game clearly doesn't want you to be. It feels like it's the combat, you can die so easily that it's very clear the game's emphasis is try to do as much of this without being detected as possible. And that's what the early games were. And I am just enjoying it quite a bit. It may not be for everybody. Some people, I think, like that big kind of RPG style thing that they really introduced with Origins. And I enjoyed it in Origins as well. But you know what? There's something to be said for this type of gameplay. Again, this is what defined the series early on, and people liked it. They've sanded off a lot of the rough edges, so that also helps. But this is just a beautiful game that has a very specific gameplay style, and if you enjoy it, especially if you enjoyed the early games, you're probably going to like this quite a bit. But on the other side, if you like the bigger RPG style games, then no, this is not for you. They have steered this particular title in a different direction. I don't know if that's going to define the rest of the mainline games, but even if this is just a subset that they start putting out, then I will be playing these. The big games can go to those who like them. I'll stick with stuff like this. Later.